Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a new storm that'll be impacting parts of the United States over the next few days, which will increase the risk for severe weather, including damaging winds, large to very large hail, and even a couple tornadoes. I'll give you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, but let's first begin with what's happening across the United States today. We'll first begin with the Central Plains, and that's where we actually have a pretty impressive complex of storms that is now beginning to weaken out, but there was actually some severe weather in parts of the Central Plains and even back through areas in Missouri and Iowa over the past few hours. That complex of storms, though, is now weakening, and as that drifts down to the south, we're really not going to see a whole lot of rainfall really reach areas like Arkansas and Oklahoma, unfortunately, for those that really do need a little bit more rainfall with the drought that's been ongoing down that direction. Now, back further off to the west, we do have a high pressure system that is very large, by the way, in the upper level, and this is being able to basically create this circulation, this clockwise circulation, which is very typical, by the way, for high pressure system. And you'll notice that cloud cover back up in parts of like the northwest United States, the west coast, all of that is circulating around this ridge, and this ridge is what we call a heat dome, especially for this time of the year. And this heat dome over the next few days will intensify, and it will bring heat for a much larger chunk of the United States. Right now, it's really centered across areas in the southern plains, back through the southwest United States, and really across the entire Great Plains. But this will start to expand more off to the east over the next few days, potentially impacting almost the entire United States. And we'll talk more about what this means in just a moment. And then back over in the northeast, we do have some showers, a few storms, but nothing too crazy, nothing that organized, pretty typical activity. And then further off to the north in Canada, we'll be watching this area over the next couple of days for that next storm that we need to watch closely, because this will drift down to the south and southeast, bringing the risk for some severe weather in parts of the Midwest. And we'll talk again more about that in just a few moments. But first, let's talk more about the jet stream, which really controls the weather pattern in the United States. And as of right now, we do have a meridional jet stream, which means that there's more curvature to what we're seeing. And obviously, we have the big ridge down the southwest United States. That's our heat dome. It's been bringing a extensive heat wave to the United States. And then back further off to the north and northeast, there's no reminiscent low pressure system in parts like the northeast or even in southern Canada. It's actually lifted way off here to the north. It's not even on the screen. That's how far off north that low pressure system is. The jet stream, though, is very wide and very large, but over the next few days, this will become more organized, and we'll eventually see that ridge move further out to the east, which will literally expand in the United States, bringing that heat wave to a large chunk of the country. We're really not going to have any dips in the jet stream like what we've seen over the past couple of weekends. We've seen big dips in the jet stream in parts like the East Coast and the Ohio Valley, but we're not going to see any of that. In fact, our jet stream is going to be lifted very far off to the north. This will be more of a zonal jet stream, which is more of a straight line jet stream that we are going to be seeing. Pretty typical, by the way. We see zonal and meridional jet streams quite often. Those are the two main types of jet streams. Once we get closer to Thursday and to Friday, though, notice this jet stream is going to be still lifted way off to the north. All this purple and pink that you're seeing up here, those are your stronger upper level winds, and those are all, again, very far off to the north. So we could, in fact, actually see a train of storms develop off of this jet stream. What would that mean? Well, that would entail the threat for more severe weather associated with this train of storms right along this jet stream, which would primarily impact areas like the Midwest, possibly even the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. Then once we get into next weekend and into early next week, that low pressure system will actually start to deepen back over in the Northeast United States. This will allow for a cool down in parts of like areas like the Northeast and possibly as well as areas like New England and back maybe even close to the East Coast. And then our ridge will continue to dominate across parts of the southern United States. That is our heat dome. It will not be moving anytime soon. Unfortunately, it's going to be sitting there for a while, creating that extensive heat wave that we are just so desperately waiting for it to leave at some point so we can actually see some cooler weather. But obviously, again, we are still a few days away even from the peak of summer. So we definitely have to keep that in mind as well. And you might be wondering, what does this heat actually look like in terms of where will the warmest temperatures be? So this is the temperature anomalies. The red will be indicating above average temperatures and blue is below average temperatures. And as we go throughout the next few days, notice where all that red is, and even the darker red colors, that's indicating well above average temperatures across a large chunk of the United States and as well as southern Canada. So unfortunately, you don't really see much blue, and that's because there will not be really many areas that will be seeing below average temperatures, at least throughout this week. And then once we get closer to the weekend, this heat just continues. This is by Friday Friday night. Still very hot across much of the country. Eventually by Saturday, Sunday into Monday, there might be some cooler air that starts to usher in to areas like the Northeast, perhaps the Midwest and the Northern Plains. But again, things do become more uncertain in the long term, but we are definitely due for some type of cool down here in the United States. Now, this is the Climate Prediction Center's forecast for the first week of August, and notice this is the area that will be watching for some cooler temperatures. At least that's the forecast. Below average temperatures are more likely than not there, and then above average temperatures for the remainder of the country, for the western half and the southern tier of the United States. So unfortunately, not a whole lot of relief there. And notice the heat indices going into Friday, by the way. This is Friday afternoon. Areas in the Midwest could get as high as the 110s. This includes Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, as well as Kansas and Missouri. Really, any part of this area could be watching for heat indices as high as 100 to 115 degrees. Definitely make sure you're monitoring your weather closely and limiting outdoor time if you're anywhere in those areas going into Friday, and even perhaps for a much more large chunk of this week. We could be talking about that as well on Wednesday and Thursday, but temperatures should be a little bit lower at least. Now, let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, and we'll begin with today. There are a few areas that we need to watch for closely, one of which is in the Northeast. We do have a slight risk of severe weather for parts of New York and Vermont, and another area back over here in the Ohio Valley, which I personally think will be a bit more concerning, mainly for some large hail and maybe some damaging wind gusts. Tornado risk very low today, not really watching really much for any tornado risk because of the low-level jet being so weak. We'll not have a whole lot of shear out there. Then back in areas like Wisconsin and eastern Minnesota, we'll also have a chance for some severe weather, very low chance, but some sporadic damaging winds and hail possible there. And then a bit more of a rare marginal risk of severe weather back over in parts of Nevada, back into Montana, and that's mainly for large hail and damaging winds as well. There's going to be a lot of instability available in the Ohio Valley today. We have a lot of sunshine out there, so instability will be available for severe weather. That's one of the main ingredients that we need for storms to at least pop up, and more instability that we have, the more significant severe weather can sometimes be. So we'll have at least some instability available across the Ohio Valley, and that should at least allow for some severe storms this afternoon. Now let's talk more about the timing for the Ohio Valley, and really this afternoon will be interesting. So that little complex of storms I mentioned at the top of this forecast, it's probably already weakened out by the time you're watching this video, but that's the area that we're watching for that complex this morning. Now through the afternoon around 2-3 o'clock, a few sporadic storms are possible near like western Kentucky, western Tennessee. Low chance for any severe weather. Notice by 4 to 5 o'clock, those storms start to fire off across really the northern Ohio Valley, so Indiana and Ohio. That's where we will be watching for some damaging winds and large hail. By 7 to 8 o'clock, more storms are firing off, and a lot of these will be producing that risk for, again, damaging winds and large hail. But overall, not a whole lot of organization with these, so the damaging wind and large hail threat will still be on the lower side of things, even though some of these storms will produce that threat. Not everybody will see severe weather, but you definitely want to make sure you take those proper precautions. And around midnight or so, storms continue to move off to the east. Gusty winds and lightning are going to be the main concerns as we go throughout the overnight hours. Now, heading into Tuesday, this is tossing trampolines on Tacos Tuesday. We do have a slight risk of severe weather back up into the northern plains, and a marginal threat as well back in those same areas from about Kansas into areas like Minnesota and North Dakota. Main concern right now is damaging winds, large hail. Tornado risk remains very low. This is the timing for tomorrow. We'll be watching for storms to fire up early during the evening hours, so around 6-7 o'clock. This is the area that we'll be watching for some storm activity. That also includes southeast North Dakota. Eventually going closer to 8 to 9 o'clock, those storms move off to the east, and eventually going to the overnight, not a whole lot of severe weather is left there. It'll be a pretty short-lived event overall in terms of severe weather. Now, heading into Wacky Weather Wednesday, we do have a slight risk of severe weather across parts of the Ohio Valley and the Midwest, and this is a storm that we do need to watch for closely. The main reason why is because this could potentially become a small-scale severe weather outbreak with damaging winds and large hail being the main concerns, but we could perhaps see maybe a couple of tornadoes as well. So as of right now, this is the region that we're watching. There is a slight risk. There might be an enhanced risk. I would say right now it's a low chance of that, but definitely still something to watch for. And the main reason why we have to watch this closely is because we'll be watching a strengthening low pressure system back up in Canada that'll allow for that chance for some severe weather in parts of the Midwest. And that's the reason why we need to watch this closely, because that low pressure system development, if it's able to strengthen enough near the surface, that could create some shear and maybe perhaps produce a couple of tornadoes. So we need to watch this potential closely. Again, as of right now, it's on the lower side of things, but it is something to watch for over the next few days. Definitely make sure you're staying tuned with us. We'll keep you posted with the latest details. This is what it currently looks like in terms of timing. It's a broad overview, but we'll be watching for some storms during the afternoon hours and evening. Mainly during the late afternoon and evening as we'll be watching for some storm activity. Two different areas to watch for. One will be probably in Michigan, and the other which will be back in the Midwest near Illinois and as well as in southern Wisconsin. Two are different areas. We might see a line of storms develop out of this and push down to the south and east. Meanwhile, we might see some more discrete supercell action back over in the Midwest. But I just want to remind you that things could change here over the next few days, so we'll have to watch this closely. Again, by no means am I saying there's going to be a full-blown severe weather outbreak here, but it is a possibility depending on how things evolve here over the next 24 to 48 hours. Once we get closer to 7 to 8 o'clock, storms move down to the south and east, and eventually going in closer to the overnight hours near midnight. Those storms will likely be impacting areas like Indiana and Ohio. I'll have more details for you in our next forecast if anything does change. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like the button down below and subscribe if you've not already.